Loch Ness, Scotland, 23 miles long, 750 feet deep, the largest lake in Britain. Massive and moody, the setting for one of the most enduring mysteries of modern times. Is this the home of an unknown monster, seen by hundreds over the years? Or is there a simpler explanation? The latest expedition is led by the Loch Ness submarine, here to uncover the secrets of the loch. The sub faces a mammoth task, to explore a body of water twice as deep as the North Sea. The loch is so big, it could hold the world's population 3 times over. The waters are black, stained with peat, a perfect place for an unsolved mystery. The mystery first hit the headlines when this photo of the monster was published in 1934. This is the surgeon's photo, so called because a London doctor, Robert Wilson, claimed to have snapped it early one April morning. As news of the picture of this strange creature spread to all corners of a fascinated world, Loch Ness became the most closely observed stretch of water on Earth. Hundreds of people saw the monster.
It was like looking at the top part of a tyre in a tube. Black, I could see the water running off its back.
It was sort of a dark brown, very, very rough, scaly.
It stood erect out of the water and sailed right into our view.
What James Ballantyne and others saw greatly resembled the surgeon's photo. People analysed and reanalysed the picture. Some drew attention to the flipper in front of the neck and the ring of waves created by the just submerged body behind the head. And the neck and head fit perfectly eyewitness accounts of the monster. But this photo, which had sparked such tremendous excitement, was in fact a fake. 2 men recently discovered the fraud, destroying in a moment the most famous proof for the Loch Ness monster. One, Alistair Boyd, an expert on the monster, spends time at the loch every year. The other, David Martin, is a zoologist specialising in the fish of Loch Ness. He was doing routine research when he stumbled on his discovery.
I was looking through some newspaper articles of the Loch Ness Centre, and I came across one of about 20 years old. In it, there was a publican at the Cross Keys pub in Chelsea who claimed that he had made a model of a monster in 1934 and photographed it. I thought, well, this is interesting. Let's see if the photograph that he's talking about is the same one as the surgeon's photograph.
David Martin went to see Weatherall's stepbrother, Christian Spurling, who told him the whole story. It was Christian Spurling who built the model that fooled the world for 60 years. He told Martin he bought a clockwork submarine for 12p from Woolworths, made a 12-inch plastic wood monster head and stuck it on the conning tower. He gave it to his stepbrother Ian, who took it up to Loch Ness. We recreated the model monster. Alistair Boyd showed us how they took the fraudulent picture.
They came up and they found a small inlet where these little wavelets would look like full-size waves, to fool people as to the scale. And they just put the thing out. It was powered by a little clockwork motor. There was a key in the conning tower at the back, and they had it chugging along and took several shots of it. And I think that the best of them is what's now known as the surgeon's photograph. People thought that a surgeon would be beyond playing a practical joke.
Robert Wilson was so ashamed of his role in the conspiracy, he fled Britain for Papua New Guinea and died in Australia, an exile. For his part in exposing the fraud, Alistair Boyd became known as the man who destroyed the Loch Ness monster.
This is rather unfortunate the way this blew up in my face slightly, because I've now got this reputation, for better or worse, for being the man who's killed off the Loch Ness monster, and I have had a very convincing sighting of what I believe was a large unknown animal in the loch just Here, where we're standing just out in the bay here, I was up in a lay-by in 1979 and saw this, what was obviously a very large, powerful creature, turn around just under the surface, and then a large, dark hump came out of the water, rolling forward, very like a whale, was there for several seconds. Neither my wife nor I saw it actually submerge because we turned around to look for the camera. But when we turned around again, the water was totally flat calm, not a ripple.
The debunking of the surgeon's photo did not close the door on the mystery. Alistair Boyd is just one of hundreds who've seen this creature. But where's the proof? The hunt for the creature first went underwater 25 years ago. In 1969, the submarine Pisces led a major investigation. The United States sent the Yellow Submarine and a leading cryptozoologist from the University of Chicago, Professor Roy McCall.
My best guess is that we have some kind of mammal, possibly a sirenian. A sirenian is an animal related to the elephants, but completely aquatic. Now, the kinds we ordinarily hear of are the tropical ones, dugongs and manatees, and they're not very large, 10 or 12 feet. But there was a very large sea cow, which Steller discovered in the Bering Strait in 1740, which was about 35 feet long and would be quite large enough to account for some of the observations here.
The underwater quest for the monster has been relentless. In 1974, Adrian Shine came to Scotland to find unusual mammals in both Loch Ness and Loch Morar.
I did come as a naturalist. It struck me that there was an excellent wildlife mystery on our back doorstep, a soft option, and I'd be able to do it and go home. I've been here 20 years now.
In a glass-bottomed boat, he first explored 200 miles of the shoreline. He then built his own bathoscope. He filmed looking upwards, hoping the creature might swim overhead. She didn't. Today, a new high-tech sub is here to uncover the secrets of Loch Ness. The 34-foot Loch Ness submarine, a former Royal Navy vessel used to rescue nuclear submarines stranded at sea. Now it dives 750 feet down the dark depths of Loch Ness, searching for some trace of the 20th century's most elusive creature.
There's large cave formations, we understand, which we need to be looking into, and that possibly supports the theory that you've got tunnels linked into those caves that maybe go out possibly to sea or link in one of the other lochs in the area, and maybe supports the theory that Nessie can come and go. On our underwater communication system, which is fairly low frequency, we've actually been hearing strange noises. Now, if we're in other parts of the world, we quite often hear on those frequencies, especially 10 kilohertz, dolphins or whales talking. One theory is it's maybe seals, of which perhaps 4 or 5 are seen each year. The other theory, possibly, it's Nessie herself.
The monster story is so powerful, it can change a man's life forever. Three years ago, Steve Feltham gave up everything to try to film the monster. He believes good film evidence will provide the most convincing proof of the animal. He bought himself an old mobile library in which he travels all round the loch. It's his headquarters. His HQ is also his home and his workshop. He supports himself making clay model monsters.
In the summertime, they certainly keep me ticking over, keep me in food and diesel around the loch, which is the main thing, which is why I make them, you know, to support my full-time hunt, really. I'm sure one day that I'll get a good sighting of whatever's in here, and one day I'll get a good bit of video film off the things. That bit of film I'll flog to the highest bidder, use that money to buy a boat, get some echo sounder equipment, get more secure. A good bit of film will hopefully fund the next 10 years of this hunt.
That may seem far-fetched, but that's exactly what happened to the most eminent monster hunter of them all. Early one spring morning in 1960, Tim Dinsdale, using a small Bolex camera, shot the most famous moving images of the monster. This film changed Dinsdale's life. It gave him funds to become the first full-time monster hunter and buy a whole range of equipment.
Of course, a cine camera with rather a special 10-to-1 zoom lens and enough film. It's colour film. It's electrically driven and it's a very exact piece of mechanism.
Dinsdale's classic footage was the first ever movie film of the animal.
I knew at once I was looking at the extraordinary humped back of some huge living creature, and with icy control started to film, firing long, steady bursts like a machine gunner.
An hour later, Dinsdale filmed a 15-foot boat to compare with his shots of the monster. He then sent the footage to RAF Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Center, which concluded that it was probably an animate object, 12 to 16 feet long, 3 feet high, 6 feet wide, and traveling at 12 miles per hour.
This is your 10th year since you got your film that you've been looking for the monster. What luck have you had during that time, really?
Well, most interestingly, I haven't really had very much. I've missed it, I believe, on a couple of occasions by chance. I was there for a long time and then happened to go away and it was seen shortly afterwards. But this, I think, is the luck of the draw.
For 27 years until his death, Dinsdale hunted the mysterious animal. He never saw it again. He was not the only hunter. Others have filmed the creature. Inspired by Dinsdale, the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau set up camp on the banks of the loch. It planned saturation coverage for conclusive photographic evidence.
Now, the majority of you are going to be manning cameras.
And we man our cameras up and down the loch throughout the whole fortnight.
One of the photographers was Dick Rayner.
I photographed an object that I first saw as a silver line on the surface of the water. And through binoculars, I could see a small object sticking up at the front, perhaps a foot high, 6 inches diameter. And at that point, I decided to start filming. Soon afterwards, the pleasure boat Scott II came into frame, and I kept the camera running while that went part way through the frame. It gave a good idea of scale. Soon after it was processed, the RAF Photo Interpretation Branch were given the film to look at, and they said the object in it was possibly 7 feet long at the surface, going at an average speed of about 5 miles an hour.
This whet the appetite of the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau, which decided to harpoon the animal.
In the late 60s, one of the objectives of the LNI was to obtain a tissue sample from Nessie. And to this end, we used to go out in a small rowing boat at night, dressed in wetsuits, armed with a crossbow. And on the end of this crossbow, there was this tissue sampling dart, which is hollow. And the idea was that when Nessie came up, you fired the dart into its hide and pulled on the line to retrieve a tissue sample, whereafter you beat a hasty retreat. I did 2 or 3 night drifts, but we never got close enough to see anything.
But perhaps the most startling visual evidence to date was taped by a tourist at Urquhart Castle in August 1992. The tape was so convincing, it immediately rekindled the controversy between those who believe in a monster and the skeptics who don't.
I'm amazed by what I've seen. I haven't seen anything like it. I think it's very unusual. I can't see an easy interpretation, but it might well be a large living creature of some sort. Now the object looks as if it's the interference pattern of two wakes that have come together and are forming interference between each other, forming what looks like an object, but isn't really anything more than just water.
The Scottish Highlanders have become used to such controversy. They've long shared their home with this mysterious creature. They keep a weather eye on a loch whose mood changes by the minute.
It's a very moody place. You get a lot of sort of very quiet days, you know, when there's hardly any wind, and then sudden gust will come down from the mountains and it goes all dark and wavy and choppy in the middle, you know, and sometimes there's little shafts of light play like a kaleidoscope in the tops of the waves, so you can imagine almost anything moving, skitting across the loch. It's such an ancient myth, of course. It's well over 1,400 years since St. Columba first saw the monster in the years 560, we imagine, when he was travelling to Inverness. And according to that myth, of course, he's supposed to have blessed the monster so that it didn't actually gobble anyone up. So Nessie is, in fact, perfectly harmless.
The inky black waters of Loch Ness ooze mystery. It attracts the strangest visitors. The French experimental artist Jean Abré wraps his boat in black plastic. He summons the beast from the deep waters. He wants her to baptize him.
The world's most timeless mystery.
So you'll be another beastie hunter?
The year's most magical adventure is about to be revealed.
We got something here. Fire up the strobe. It's coming towards us fast. It's moving too fast. I've lost it. It's true. You said you'd seen it. You did.
You've got to believe it before you can see it.
Loch Ness.
It's 11:30. It's 11:30. It's 11:30. Diet Coke break. Diet Coke break.
I don't want you to be no slave. I don't want you to work all day. But I want you to be true. And I just want to make love to you. Love to you.
See you tomorrow, 11:30.
Love.
The new Almira will take it for a test drive.
Of course.
Alone.
Great fun to drive. Comfortable too.
Multi-link beam suspension.
The new Almira, the car they don't want you to drive.
The internet will be the biggest thing to hit business since the Industrial Revolution.
The internet will be nothing more than a chat line for physicists and video game addicts.
Someday your web address will be more important than your phone number.
One day on the internet, a modern-day Attila the Hun will loot and pillage all in his path.
One day on the internet, the Colonel's secret recipe will whiz past the secret formula for Pepsi.
There are many visions of what the internet will become. The truth is, no one really knows what's going to happen. But as the computer company with the most internet experience, we've learned to engineer systems that anticipate this vast uncertainty, so that you and your company can approach it as one huge opportunity. Digital, whatever it takes.
Orange now covers 90% of the population of Great Britain and is still growing. And the size of our digital network means however busy we get, there will always be room. The future's bright. The future's orange. Call 0800 80 10 80.
Loch Ness is both deep and dark. Dark because peat washed into the loch from the surrounding hills stains the water black. Deep because of the way it was formed. Loch Ness was created 300 million years ago when the tectonic plates moved, slicing northern Scotland in two. In the Ice Age, Scotland was buried under 4,000 feet of ice, so heavy it gouged out the fissure which is now Loch Ness. For scientists, the mystery is, what are the food sources? The loch is abundant with life, but is so deep and dark, plants don't grow. 300 miles away at Lancaster University, Dr. Roger Jones is searching for the key to the secret of life in the loch.
What we're studying at Lancaster is the food chain of the plankton in the lake, which organisms eat each other, and which organisms are being eaten and leading up perhaps to fish production. We've got a 3-year contract funded by the Natural Environment Research Council to investigate the flow of carbon through the plankton food chain in Loch Ness. We work on carbon because carbon is the chemical element which is the fundamental building block of all life. The waters in the loch are stained with peaty material which is fueling the bacteria and onwards up the food chain to the fish. Here we see some of the phytoplankton from Loch Ness. Phytoplankton are at the base of the food chain. They're like the grass of Loch Ness. This is one of the zooplankton, a rotifer. This will be feeding on bacteria and small phytoplankton. This one we're rather excited about because it seems to be a new species which hasn't been described previously.
Have we found Nessie?
Only that you can see here on the picture behind us. That's our evidence.
Dr. Jones jokingly dismisses the monster. He's one of many skeptical scientists who refuse even to discuss her.
A lot of the eyewitnesses to sightings of the monster are people who, in the view of a lot of people, have tremendous credibility, the kinds of people who would be...
I'm not going to answer any questions on that kind of thing.
What about the nature of belief? I mean, what is science interested in as opposed to...
No, I'm not going to answer any questions on this.
Even before the surgeon's photo was revealed as a hoax, many scientists had refused to acknowledge even the possibility of an unknown creature in the loch. To eyewitnesses, that's frustrating.
Scientists tend to have had a dismissive attitude of the Loch Ness Monster, and yet at the same time have refused to get involved here. I think because the security of their job probably depends on them supporting the status quo, basically. Nobody really wants to stick their neck out, as it were, and go looking for what they may find an embarrassment in their careers.
What scientific research there is on the loch is underfunded. The sub takes tourists down to subsidise its operations. Today, the scientists are studying plankton. During the day, the plankton hide 100 feet down. They can only be reached by submarine.
What I'm going to do now, as we've come to a hover inside the lair, is turn on the lights.
We want to prove that the scattering layer is made up of small fish. And so we've got to take photographic evidence that they're coming in here.
What we're seeing outside the window at the moment is your basic food chain in life. And the question is, is there enough food out there for Nessie?
Today, the amount of food in these waters is one of the great issues in the Loch Ness controversy.
We believe there are only 20 tons of available fish as food in Loch Ness. You have to divide that by 10, you get 2 tons of monster, tops. Now, the trouble with that is, if you want a resident population too, you've got to divide it up again, maybe by another 10. It looks pretty bad for very large resident predators.
But believers in the monster question the credibility of the scientists' data.
I have my suspicions about the fish counts that have been done in the loch. Certainly one big project that was here last summer, their fish count, even talking to those scientists at the time when they were doing it, they were trying to work out the fish population, and they were saying that they were constantly coming up against areas of the loch where the salmon were running through, that landowners were saying, don't go in there doing your netting and sampling because that's too delicate an area, that's the salmon runs.
The problem with these analysis of the amount of fish in the loch is that they're always subject to review. One scientist will tell you it's 1 ton, another scientist will say it's 20 tons or 27 tons, whatever.
Yes, that's true. The first surveys were done by myself and the hydroacoustic unit at Royal Holloway College.
But how do you account for the fact that there's such huge differences amongst the scientists?
Well, most of the estimates centre around 20 tons. The first 3 are within the 20s, and that's certainly within margins of error. The estimate of 1 ton I find difficult to believe myself.
The strongest evidence that we have in this case is the eyewitness testimony, and this is what scientists by and large have turned a blind eye to. Although I'm completely behind the scientific work that's being done at the loch at the moment, it's just general scientific work to find out about the plankton or fish life, whatever. We need something specifically aimed at looking at the sightings of the Loch Ness Monster.
Despite the scorn of the scientists, the eyewitness reports still pour in. They remain the most compelling and irrefutable evidence for the existence of a creature unknown to science. In total, there have been more than 1,400 recorded sightings.
I came down this way here, and the man was standing there. He was pointing out to the middle of the loch. That's the very spot between the trees. It was halfway between the shore, this shore, and the other shore. And there was this animal, or whatever it was making its way over this way, over towards this shore here. He had 2 humps and a long neck, and we watched it for about 4 or 5 minutes, and he came and dived down. And when he went down, it left that oily patch on the surface of the loch.
I was driving from Inverness towards Drumnadrochit, and I saw what I thought was an upturned boat on the other side of the loch, just near Doors. And when I looked again, there was nothing there. It was large. It was a grey, blacky, mottly sort of a colour.
4 years ago, I was fishing down about 6 miles down the loch, and a flipper came out of the water about 2.5 feet wide by about the same tall. I could see how thick it was, and the colours of the white and went into black dots. And I got a bit of a fright, and I took off for the bushes.
I saw the Loch Ness Monster as plainly as can be. She lifted up her tiny little head and winked her eye at me. She swam into the middle of the loch, she swam out to the shore. Going up and down and up and down and up and down and more.
So what is it that people are seeing? In 1961, Tim Dinsdale, who spent 27 years monster hunting, analysed 100 detailed eyewitness accounts. We asked graphic designer Mike O'Donovan to recreate the animal based on this study. He used a 3D animation computer, like the one used to create the dinosaurs in the movie Jurassic Park.
We start with the basic profile curves from Dinsdale's sightings. He's got characteristics of a long neck, flat head, tail, and humps.
Dinsdale found 43% of the eyewitnesses had seen a horse-like head with a long neck.
From this profile, we make a 3D object.
Nearly half saw humps.
Now I'm going to enlarge the top right-hand window to show the 3D model, which I'm going to rotate.
1 in 3 described the monster as huge, tremendously long, and between 30 and 40 feet long.
And next, we add some more details. And once we've got the basic model, we need to add skin texture and colours. Most sightings reckon that it's a skin-like surface rather than scales, which appeared rough up close. From far away it looks quite smooth, which the water would have that effect for reflections. Battleship grey was one of the most commonly mentioned colours, or like the hide of an elephant. So once we've got our basic model and our colours, we can look at it in 3D. We can look around it. Our next step, of course, is to animate that. People have said they've seen her playing on the surface, and then when she hears a noise or she's spotted, she swims away very quickly.
Could this be the mysterious creature that people see? But surely an animal as large as this must be detectable, even in the inky black waters of Loch Ness. Well, it is. In 1982, the Loch Ness project used sonar, a type of underwater radar. 150 experts spent 1,500 hours in a major expedition. They hunted for the monster at depths well below where normal fish live. They tuned the equipment to track only large echoes. They made 40 contacts that moved like large creatures. This contact is big and obviously diving.
It has all the indications of being an animal. There's no two ways about that.
This is a sonar trace of the loch. It's shaped like a trench. Here the sonar picks up fish. They are the crescent shapes, rarely more than 30 meters down, never lower than 60. Here's a significant contact. Too big for a fish, a very strong target moving up and down. And here's another strong contact, diving steeply toward the bottom. This one is the best. Two strong contacts, 270 feet down, slowly moving together towards the surface. Another sonar made this contact at 140 meters. The color indicates a signal of maximum strength, and while it was monitored, the target dived.
If these contacts are animals, then these are probably Loch Ness monsters.
Encouraged by this success, the Loch Ness project and its leader, Adrian Shine, spent the next 5 years planning Operation Deep Scan.
Keep faith with all the maligned eyewitnesses who look to you for vindication.
Operation Deep Scan was the biggest in the history of Loch Ness. A fleet of boats equipped with sonar which could pick up fish 3 inches long, hundreds of feet down. For 2 days, boats were strung out across the loch, their vertical sonar creating a moving curtain. They produced a highly detailed map of the loch floor. They chased contacts in the water with scanning sonar. As the boats turned and moved back across the loch, experts compared the new reading of the loch bed. They planned to investigate prominent stationary objects, but what they really hoped for was a moving feature, because that could be the monster. On the first day, 2 sizable unidentified moving objects were discovered at the bottom of the loch. The next day, the boat swept the area again, making a strong sonar contact, and the position had changed. When a support boat went to check it, it had gone. All it left was a faint line on the sonar trace, nearly 600 feet down.
They are of a strength greater than any of the fish we are familiar with in Loch Ness.
Deep Scan was a major success. 3 significant echoes of moving creatures larger than sharks, but smaller than whales. What could they be? The largest fish in the loch are salmon. Something big is down there, but what is it?
The sort of creature that could come into the loch would be a sturgeon. It is conceivable that the largest freshwater fish in existence could have made its way in the past up into Loch Ness and started a tradition.
For years, there were rumours of monsters in Lake Washington in the United States. Then in 1987, they caught a sturgeon, a huge fish weighing half a ton. Steve Feltham takes a sceptical view of this explanation.
Time and time again, I talk to local people that see things. The most common characteristic is this upturned boat cutting through the water. Now, being aware of this sturgeon possibility, I always quiz the witnesses as to whether or not running down the back of that thing is a row of fins, which a sturgeon always has. And not any of them out of maybe 100 or 200 people that I've spoken to over the time have ever seen these fins on the back of it.
If Loch Ness's mysterious creature turned out to be something as mundane as a fish, it could devastate local tourism.
It is the best known thing worldwide in Scotland. The exhibitions in the village, for example, you're talking somewhere in £3 million worth of, business. You're also talking about employment. We have given Scotland something like £10 million worth of free advertising. Everybody goes on about the fun part of it, the serious part of it, but we have got something here that has not been solved, and it's got to be done. Science is now taking an interest, which has only come about because we at the exhibition have actually thrown cash and interest and people at it for 20 years.
Science is no closer to identifying the beast, yet still there are sightings of the monster. While we were filming at Loch Ness, James Brown, a local Highlander, not only saw it, he photographed it.
This is it, sir. Excellent. 9 minutes, then. Nice pair of binoculars, sir. They're not service issue? Certainly not. They're Austrian. Barclay card, is it, sir? What? Did you get them on your Barclay card, sir?
And why should I want to do a thing like that?
Well, sir, you get 100 days free insurance.
Yes?
Well, in case...
In case they get stolen? And who's going to steal them, exactly? Are we about to be mugged by a gang of delinquent haddock?
You could always lose them, sir.
Lose them in a 5-foot dinghy? Oh, dear, I've lost my binoculars. Oh, no, there they are under the seat.
You got your damage, sir? Will you shut up about Barclay card, Bob?
You couldn't damage a pair of binoculars in here if you tried. So, let's hear no more about Barclay card. You see, a man of my experience knows that when he's got a pair of binoculars...
Saab, from £15,000 and upwards. Saab, beyond the conventional.
Every day, over 5 million people do exactly the same thing. Save for the future with Nationwide.
You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want, but you must try. Try and try. Try and try. You'll succeed at last. You can get it if you really want.
nationwide.
We remain a nation of film lovers. There's always something new to see, always something different.
There's a free cinema ticket for everyone at over 250 UCI cinemas nationwide, starting tomorrow only with The Times.
Cinema is always changing.
Every year, Highlanders gather on the loch to meet and play games. They've known about the monster since time began. It's part of their heritage. Many of them have personally seen the creature. Monster sightings occur so frequently at Loch Ness that during the making of this film, the beast was not only spotted, but captured on camera. Jim and James Brown, father and son, were out hunting. Armed not with guns, but cameras. Jim with his Hi-8 video, and James with his 300mm lens.
We started off out in the hills up there, originally going out to photograph deer, and I was looking down on the loch, you know, giving it a look just for Nessies, you never know your luck, and this huge wake in the water caught my eye.
Suddenly there was a big swirl in the middle of it, and a V shape headed off diagonally for the shore on the north side. Now, I followed this V and then saw a big dark hump come out the water, just ahead of the V, a big oval-shaped hump. Oh, probably 5 or 6 feet long and 3 feet wide maybe. And immediately it clicked, gosh, this must be Nessie. I've got it now, recording. I'm going to take another one. So I can get we're standing by the side of Loch Ness. This is what, the 23rd, isn't it? It's the 23rd of August, and we have just seen the Loch Ness monster on the other side of the loch, in that bay on the other side. Now, it's a long way away, and James took a couple of shots with the Nikon and a 300mm lens.
This is what we saw. Now, obviously, you need to have been there to appreciate what we saw, really, but I'm sure you can make out the disturbance. I was trying to hold the camera as still as possible, but it was rather difficult. This is the point where something black actually did bob up and down. As I say, I don't think I've caught it in the camera, but if you can notice the first V at the head there, there's a sort of darkish blur there, which could possibly be the hump which my dad saw.
But what did Jim and James see? A monster? Or just a wake? While we were at Loch Ness, we filmed these 5 creatures. Are they Nessies or ducks? Dinsdale says he filmed the monster. Skeptics say it's a boat. Was Rayner's film the monster, or was it wildlife? Was the tourist video only wakes or seals? What does an eyewitness see? 20 years after beginning his hunt for the creature, Adrian Shine hasn't yet seen it. He wanted to, but nowadays he's more skeptical. For him, eyewitness accounts are perhaps just a trick of the light, with everyone interpreting their sightings in their own way.
They are seeing their Nessie. Anything you do not understand on the surface of Loch Ness is your Nessie. And they are all seeing their Nessies.
But even this explanation looks shaky when you consider one of the most famous sightings of all. What happens to the controversy when not just one person, but 9 people all see the same Nessie at the same time? And they watch that Nessie for nearly an hour. No one has spent as long watching Nessie as Ian Cameron, a retired detective and former head of CID in the Highlands. On June the 6th, 1965, he had the longest ever sighting of the monster. As a former policeman, Ian Cameron knows that 9 credible witnesses to a murder would convince any judge and jury in court. But prior to 1965, he'd never believed in the Loch Ness monster.
I was about 100, 150 yards up the shore from my friend William Fraser, and I was casting out when something caught my eye on the loch. It looked to me rather more like an upturned boat. I shouted to my friend who was further down, and he came up and we watched it, and as it went down we thought, well, it's going to come ashore, or it's going to, if it tacks down there. But suddenly it turned, so we went up, jumped into the car, went down to the next nearby. And then the most interesting thing was, of all, was where it demonstrated that it had a power source. Because the wind, as it's coming today, was coming across at the angle, and if it had no means of power, it was definitely going to come on this shore. But it tracked right across the Clansman, arched out, and there, and it went straight across and submerged.
Ian's friend, Willie Fraser, is now dead. Fraser had 2 sightings, one with Ian and one the previous year. We found his testimony, filmed back in 1969.
I saw a large object come right out of the water in front of me. I was wading in the river fishing with fly fishing, and when I got out onto the bank, by the time I got down to the bank, it had disappeared, but had reappeared over here and made its way along the side of the loch for about 50 to 60 yards, remained stationary for 10 to 15 minutes, and then took off in the direction of the other side of the loch at considerable speed, putting out a tremendous wave.
But a year later, you were both fishing here again. Now, what happened then?
Well, on that occasion, we were fishing just on this spot here, and I went up to the point here to fish into the corner of the bay when I saw what I took to be an upturned boat. It was just a black mass, a large black mass. We could see cars on the other side, and we obviously realized that 2 or 3 people had run out. You could see the movement on the road on the other side, and we realized that they were seeing what we were seeing, but from the opposite side. And as it turned out, there were 7 people actually watching it from the Drummadrochit side.
The author Ted Holliday was one of the 7 independent witnesses across the lake. He raced down to the loch to get closer.
On the other side of the loch, I could see 2 men who were quite obviously watching the spectacle. As it passed up the loch, it visibly increased its speed. It was starting to come across the loch at an acute angle. The men were hurrying up to their car. Several times it submerged, only to reappear until at last it disappeared.
That day, 9 people saw exactly the same thing from different parts of the loch. A large, black beast looking like an upturned boat. Sightings, yes, but it's not science.
The problem with an eyewitness testimony is that it's a personal testimony, which nobody else can ever be sure about the value, the validity of that personal testimony. Scientific research of the kind that we've been doing produces data which are open to criticism by the scientific community, who, if necessary, can go out and repeat our experiments, our surveys on Loch Ness, and hopefully would arrive at the same conclusions with the same kind of data that we've produced.
I'm perfectly satisfied with the evidence that I would submit. A, you can establish the locus, you can establish the time, you can, that you've got an eyewitness who's corroborated by an individual here, and in addition, you've got 7 other witnesses who are completely foreign to the 2 initial witnesses, and we don't even know who they were yet to this day. And they saw what we saw from the opposite side, and that, in my opinion, if it was submitted to any court of law, judge and jury would accept it without question. If they say it can't be supported by food, well, it may live on fresh air. I mean, I'm not going to worry about what it feeds on. because I actually saw the thing.
On board the Ecos, Adrian Shine and the Loch Ness project embark on their latest venture, Rosetta. Shine still believes the Loch hides important secrets. Not a monster, but secrets vital to our understanding of the planet. Today they'll take core samples from the bed of the Loch.
The reason we've actually got the bucket there is so that you can take this to any lake anywhere and fill it with gravel at the lakeside and still take cores. Okay, John, I'm going to take it off the gunnel.
The loch's unique shape with steep sides and a flat bottom allows sediment to accumulate steadily and regularly like strata. Under 600 feet of water, it is undisturbed by currents.
Where do you know where
The core samples are time capsules. They reveal man's impact on his environment in times past and the possible effects of global warming in the years to come.
Nice one. There we are, the history of Loch Ness like an open book, and every band a page. All we need to do is to understand the language that these are written in. All these little layers. You can see the top is very fluid, right down to about 15 centimeters or so. And that's our recent history there. And just down about here, there's a great big peak in the cesium levels, and that's Chernobyl. And a little bit further down, 1963, you've got the peak of the atom bomb testing in the atmosphere. And then we've got the whole history of the Industrial Revolution. Going back down, we've got high levels here, for example, of carbonaceous particles. They're generated by burning fossil fuels. Big increases of lead, copper and zinc as the atmosphere was steadily contaminated. And there are other things in here too, for example, this layer here. We think that's 1868, a great flood brought all these clay particles down out of the hills, and they settled down after the flood to blanket the northern basin. And then as we go further down, the layers become even closer together, the material's getting more and more compressed, back to Elizabethan times now. And finally, this latter part probably represents as much as 1,000 years ago. And 4 meters beneath this is the glacial clay, the material that was deposited 10,000 years ago as the ice went away.
Adrian Shine has turned to science and away from the search for an unknown creature. But Steve Feltham and others are determined to continue the hunt.
Been here 3 years now, summer and winter. This is the 4th summer, so that's 3 winters. But that's just the start, you know. My work here will go on for a lifetime, you know, decades yet of hunting to be done around the loch. I'm not sure I want to find it. I'm not sure I want to prove once and for all what's in the loch. I think whoever that person is will go down in history as being the man that destroyed this beautiful mystery.
I don't think Highlanders give up their myths so readily, as I certainly wouldn't. You know, I certainly believe in it as long as I'm here anyway. Perhaps Highlanders have become a little bit more reticent because of the scientists and speaking about the Loch Ness monster. I think that's a great pity.
And we remain underwater next week with a look at Ron and Valerie Taylor's 20-year quest to protect one of man's most